What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the best minion build in Path of Exile 2. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of the setup, then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on. Then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for both the leveling and mid game. And then finally we will go over the passive skill tree, stats, your skill rotations, and even what charm should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. If you're looking for this build on the website, then click my link in this video description or the pinned comment. This setup is the Spirit Minion build, which summons bunch of raging spirits by casting the Flame Wall for the offense. And then also for defense, we get to command a minion army. So unlike most other builds where you only command or cast spells, well, in this one we get to do both, and thus increase our DPS even higher. By using specific gear and building our skill tree around nodes like the Power of the Dead, Fear the Dead, Silent Guard, and many more, it will enable us to upgrade our minions and projectile area and damage. So if you're ready to explode anyone and everyone that stands in our way, while also getting a skeleton army that follows and protects you, then let's get right into it. So let me show you the build, and for the main class we have chosen to go with the Witch, and the ascendancy is the Infernalist. At first glance it looks like we're using way too many skills, but most of them are passive and will work in the background, so we will only use few of them on our skill bar. Then for the first skill we have the Summon Infernal Hound with support gems like the Elemental Army, Meat Shield, Fire Exposure, and the Strip Away. Then second we got the Unearth with minion instability and the Infernal Legion. Then next we got the Flammability with the Heightened Curse and the Spell Cascade. Then next we have the Skeletal Arsonist with Feeding Frenzy, Scatter Shot, and the Martial Tempo. Next we are also using the Flame Wall with the Fortress and the Arcane Tempo. Next we have the Skeletal Warrior with the Brutality, Splinter, and the Maim. Then we got the Raging Spirits with the Fire Infusion, Elemental Focus, and Emulate. Next we have Pain Offering with Magnified Effect and the Persistence. Then also we're using the Skeletal Storm Mage with Conduction, Storm Fire, and Overcharge. Next we have Skeletal Cleric with the Ingenuine and Last Gasp. And finally for our last one we got the Grim Feast with no support gems whatsoever. Most of this build is structured around using minions and the raging spirits, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their area and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually activate in the background. Next, let's quickly take a look at our leveling setup, which we need to use up until about level 25, because the first few levels can be a bit rough until you get the Raging Spirit skill. So first off we have the Unearth with minion instability and brutality. Next we have the Skeletal Sniper with the Martial Tempo and the Scatter Shot. Then next we also got Contagion with Concentrated Effect and Elemental Focus. And then finally we're using the Flame Wall with Fortress and the Arcane Tempo. This is your basic setup up until we increase our damage. So in the early stages of progression we're using the Unearth to deal AoE damage and to spawn more minions from the dead enemy corpses. Then the Skeletal Sniper is to use to deal damage to your enemies and to gain access to a command skill that allows you to send a gas arrow. Then the Contagion is used to debuff and deal chaos damage to your enemies and to spread a damage buff to your Unearthed minions. And finally the Flame Wall is used to buff range projectiles with fire damage and to deal more AoE damage to the enemies. The Flame Wall can also explode the gas arrow for more damage, so keep that in mind. Next up we have our passive tree. For most new players this can seem extremely daunting, so let me quickly explain. In very simple terms, every character is granted one passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more for completing certain quests. We have 3 node types, so small nodes, notable nodes, and keystones. All of them act as checkpoints that you want to reach and make a path to build around a specific playstyle. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the spell and minion damage node, and make our way like this while on our way grabbing the Raw Destruction and the Power of the Dead. Then now let's go to the right and get these 2 red nodes and then these 2 more blue ones. Then after that we want to circle back a little and make our way all the way to here to get the pure energy, which will increase our defense, which we desperately need in the early stages. Then now let's go again back to the top, but this time take the left side, and then from here we want to take all of these half circles, so we could get the Essence Infusion, then the Growing Swarm, and also the Dispendable Ward. And now from here just make your way all the way to the top of the right side. And the order in which you do it doesn't really matter, as long as you follow this path. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning, you want to unlock this Loyal Hellhound for an extra minion and reduce damage taken by 20%. Then second, pick the Altered Flesh. Then next, get the Baidat's Will for more maximum spirit. And last, pick up these 2 small life nodes, since you want as much life as possible for the Baidat's Will. And then as far as the attributes go, I recommend to take enough strength and dexterity to meet the gear and support gem requirements, and then use the rest on the intelligence. In PoE 2, earning skill points take a lot of hard work, so it will be wise not to spend your points recklessly. Of course, you can refund your passive points later, but only at a cost, so following a specific setup is extremely useful. If you are following this build, then make sure not to deviate from it, as some of the decisions that I made might not make sense at first, but is going to pay off later. So feel free to use the exact same path as I have right here, and don't forget to check this video's description to find the link for this website, and this should make it easier for you to follow the tree. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Rattling Scepter, which base grants us +2 levels to the minions. And then for the bonus stats, we also want to get increased percentage to the minions, allies deal more physical damage and just more damage increase in general. And then for the offhand, we got the Blazing Crash Shield with armor and energy shield. And for the bonuses, we want max life and more resistances like fire and lightning. Then for the helmet, we have the Iron Crown with armor and energy shield. For bonuses, we want max life, plus levels to minion skills and more to cold resistance. Then for the chest, we have the Pilgrim Vestments with armor and energy shield. For the extras, we want max life, more to spirit and fire resistance. Then for the belt, we have the Rawhide Belt with increased life recovery to flasks. And for bonuses, we want max life, fire and cold resistance. Then for gloves, we got the Thorn Gloves with max life, fire and cold resistance. Then for boots, we're using the Straw Sandals with energy shield, and for bonuses, we want increased movement speed, max life and cold resistance. Then for the first ring, we got the Sapphire Ring with cold resistance, and for more, we want max life and attributes like the strength, dexterity and intelligence. While on the second one, we got the Ruby Ring with fire resistance, and for more, we want max life, dexterity and intelligence. And then finally for the amulet, we got the Jade Amulet with dexterity, max life, more to spirit and plus levels to minion skills. As the game just launched, so this is the starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. Your weapon will be the most important upgrade, so prioritize any type of flat damage or increased attack speed. As far as getting gear goes, by far the best way to get better gear in the campaign is to check the vendor in the town each time you level up, as vendors change their offerings based on your level, so this is the best way to find upgrades. If you're desperately in the need of a weapon upgrade, then you can also check the previous act's vendors as well. Most of the damage that you take during the campaign outside of the bosses and rare encounters is the physical damage, so the armor will massively reduce the damage you take from the physical damage, so look out for hybrids like the armor and energy shield rolls on your gear. Chaos resistance can also help to deal with physical mitigation. Then you have your second ascendancy, the Altered Flesh. This build requires high attributes as you reach the end of Act 3, so finding gear with it early will definitely pay off in the future. Also, having life regeneration on just a couple of pieces as well can allow you to become more conservative with your life flask usages. Then on top of this, we need to quickly look into the charms. Charms are incredibly useful, as by having the right one equipped at the right time can save you from dying. If you're struggling with certain bosses, then look into what damage type they're using, and then use that specific charm to increase your resistance. For me personally, I like to use the Amethyst charm for chaos damage, then the Taving charm for when I become frozen, and finally the Stone charm for the stuns. But as I said, which one you choose will entirely depend on the enemies that you're fighting, so feel free to experiment and mix and match. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So the general gameplay of this build is to summon the Raging Spirits by casting the Flame Wall. Then use the Minion command skill provided by the Skeletal Arsonist to deal area-wide damage. You can also cast the Flammability to either reduce enemy damage done or increase your minions' damage. Then as far as utility goes, you want to cast the Unearth on the enemy corpses to spawn an army of the minions that explode when they reach low levels through the minion instability and the Infernal Legion. You also want to buff your army of the minions with the Pain Offering to increase their damage. But as I said, this build is very versatile, so there's no one best way or order that you should use your spells in. What I usually like to do is just to have always my minions up, and then just spam Flame Wall, Flammability and the Unearth. And then for harder boss fights, we can even implement the Pain Offering and other support skills. So let me know what you think about this build in the comments below. If you like this guide, then you definitely don't want to miss my top 3 most OP builds video, where I showed even more powerful builds. So click the screen now and I'll see you in the next one.